Okay, I'm Steve Mace from Solwise, and what I'd like to do here is do a quick run through of the GUI setup for the AP340 access point from IP.com. So the AP340 is a 2.4 gig 300 meg 11N indoor access point, and it's the second model up in the range. There is actually a model below this called the AP325, and the main difference between the 340 and 325 is the 340's got a faster processor engine in it, which basically means that the 340 can cope with more clients simultaneously. So whereas the 325, I think they give a recommendation of no more than 30 clients. The 340, you could probably go to 50 or 60 clients. But as my usual caveat there, it does depend upon what the clients are doing, of course. So here you can see the 340. It's just basically one of these dish mount, ceiling mount products. Yeah, so there you get the idea what it looks like. And it's 2.4 gig, 11N 300 meg. And it's powered, well, it can be powered through 12 volt DC. You'd need something like a 2 amp or 2.5 amp 12 volt DC power supply, or using 802 3AT PoE. That's the high power PoE. Okay, so let's go look at the product setup. Right, so by default out of the box it should be on 0.254 login address, and by default it should be on admin for the login. So here we are. The first section of the graphical user interface is just a series of status pages. So you've got system status, IP address, uptime, blah blah blah. You've got wireless status, what's happening on the wireless interfaces. Now this product supports two different SSIDs. By default the second SSID is disabled. So this screen tells you about the SSIDs, also tells you what channel it's working on, etc. Traffic statistics, you know, how much data is going through on the various SSIDs, blah blah blah. Wireless clients connected, obviously, and you can do that per SSID, but obviously no clients connected at the moment. If you've got a quick setup, that just allows you to specify which of the three modes you want it to work in. So it can be used as an access point, it can be used as a WDS device, and if you click WDS, WDS links are based upon the MAC address of the devices, so it allows you to actually put the MAC addresses of the other devices that you want to connect to, and also supports some AP client mode, so it will actually connect to another client if you want it to. So we'll just go back to AP mode, which is probably what most people will use it as. Now if I go to network, the first stage of network is obviously setting up the LAN setup, what IP address you want to give it, blah 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 blah. DHCP server setup. Now you can actually use this as a DHCP server. Never really understand why people want to have their access point to DHCP server, because it sounds to me like you have the potential there for lots of access points all clashing on the network, all wanting to be DHCP servers. But occasionally I do get people asking for it, and the function is there if you want it. Now let's go to wireless. First stage of wireless is just specifying for each of the two SSIDs what you want to do, as whether you want them to broadcast, the max number of clients per SSID, and what Wi-Fi security you want to run per SSID. If you've got a radio, now the first stage of radio is you need to set it for the correct country. Obviously by default it's China, but you notice these functions are greyed out. That's because you have to tick on that. Click on that, then we can actually scroll down the list and click England as the country, and we can select what channel to do or leave it on auto, and whether you want 20/40 or just 20 or 40 on their own. For channel bandwidth you should be picking 20/40 for 11N operation. So we'll save those settings. There we go, save the settings, so that's saved. A channel scan is just scanning the neighborhood to see what devices are using the 2.4 gig bands in your neighborhood. Advanced, yeah, horrible, confusing stuff. Don't touch it, don't understand it. But basically, it's timeouts and thresholds and horrible stuff. So I would advise leave that alone if you really know what you're doing, and I don't, so I admit that. 2.4 gig access control list for each of the SSIDs, so that's who and cannot, who can and who cannot connect to the access point based upon their MAC address. QVLAN, you can actually set up a VLAN tag on the LAN port and on the main SSID, so only the primary SSID supports a VLAN tag. SNMP, that's rather obvious what that is. If you enable that, you can enable for SNMP login administration, but won't worry about that. Deployment. Now, the AP340, like all of the newer generation access points from IPCOM, can be used as a standalone product, or it can be used through their new controllers. That's the AC1000, 2000, 3000 controllers. And rather nicely, the controllers actually also support cloud management as well. So if you're going to be using this in a cloud managed scenario, then these are the screens you need to be playing around with. So if we go to cloud, for example, we can put the MAC address, sorry, the IP address, the public IP address of the cloud controller, and the ports that we're actually going to be using to connect that cloud controller. I won't worry about that at the moment, just leave that for local standalone operation. And under tools, usually got firmware updating, screens to set the date and time, various screens for various logs, restoring to factory defaults and backing up the configuration, the ability to alter these name passwords, and it does actually set two users on this device. You've got a user and you've got an administrator, so you can actually have different levels of two types of users that can go into the configuration of the device. Usual diagnostics tools like pinging and normal rebooting functions, and you've also got a timed reboot function there if you want, so you can regularly reboot. And the only other thing you probably want to be playing around with is you can actually turn off the LEDs if you want. So that's the AP340. Quite a nice access point. It's quite a high spec one. It's not the cheapest access point certainly that we sell, but for the range of functions it offers and for the performance features that it has, it's actually quite a reasonably priced access point. But it does depend what you're after. If you just want an access point with just a few client capability and not the maximum performance, then you'd probably go for the 325. But if you had, for example, a whole classroom full of kids or something like that that you actually wanted to supply an access point for, then probably the 340 is something that you might want to consider for that application. And thank you very much.